Hello.
Angel, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you, Marita?
Good, I'm good. What are we talking about today?
Today we are going to talk about community.
That's a good topic. I know we both have a lot to say, so why don't you start?
Yeah, community. One of the things that um, I was reflecting upon is many of us that are doing those mission of service to the land, to people that are trying to weave the ancient ways in our lives in this modern world are confronted with this disconnect because most of those practices, rituals, services were always in a context of strong communities for thousands of years and until recently, in many ways. Still alive in many communities that way. But when we live in the Western world, uh, communities often not present in the same way. We cannot rely as much. We don't really, grow food for 20 people and share the garden, weeding and taking care. We don't chop the woods and take care of the wood to warm the house of the village. So we kind of end up being the one doing everything. Um, and it can be a lot.
Yeah.
And very often, because the view of community in the Western way is very different than the ancient ways, just by the
Mhm.
language, the fact that often there's not really an I, it's always a we, so there's a very different way to look at it. My experience also been that even people that call for community or want community come to be engaged in community service sometime don't always create this sacred reciprocity.
Mhm.
Meaning, like giving one example, if we say, okay, we are going to have a weekend of doing a specific thing for the land, we will have way less people interested than if we say, hey, we are going to do a thing for the land the whole weekend, and we are going to offer you a healing session. We are
Yeah.
going to offer you a teaching or something like that, right? So it's hard to have people really engaged because also people are very remote and they might just come for a weekend and then go away. They are not always local. So there are a lot of layers that
Yeah.
makes the community creation, unless we live in a community village. There are a lot of communities popping up around the United States and other countries. It's difficult to really organize community, to reflect upon community. How do we create from community to, if community is temporary for a weekend or for a long week and then it's gone, right?
Mhm.
There is not that long-term vision. Okay, we have this community and now what do we do?
Mhm.
So I don't have a solution for this.
Mhm.
I wish I
Mhm.
had. But that's the complexity of, to
Yeah.
anyone that's in that work. I know you face it, and I know many people that are taking care of a land or in deep work of service. Very often it's one of the pain that is present.
Yeah. The Western world is very transactional.
Mm.
It's about, what can I get out of this? What is the time and immediacy? You know, as someone who has existed and within a day, within a couple hours, can jump in between different circles of very Western circles, very Indigenous circles, it kind of like makes my head spin once in a while. Um, there's very different ways of community. I was talking to one of my students who went back to the reservation, and they said, I forgot how easy it is when you're in community, when you're never doing anything alone. When someone said, uncle said, hey, by the way, I need help with my garden, six people show up the next day and do it. There's just this understanding that it's not about you, right? That it's everyone is participating, because that means in the families coming together, communities come together, you're eating, you're cooking. It's not just a thing, right? You're not just coming and gardening. It becomes a whole thing.
Mhm.
But then that's how you educate, right? That's how you educate. And that's another thing that people forget, is they forget that it's the tending to the everyday things and the tending to land where the greatest teachings happen. That's always how Indigenous people have taught. Sure, we sit in circle to a certain degree, but the real quote unquote, as people like to call, integration into the body is when you're out there doing, because we come from very practical ways. A lot of our teachings are very built on practicable ways. And everything that we teach is our, we teach survival skills, whether it's the survival in a relationship with nature or with humans. That's everything we're teaching is community. And so I wanted to share that kind of imagery so that people understand the vast divide between Western ways and Indigenous ways. And I'll give another example, and I think this will be interesting, because you and I, we talk about, what are we going to be offering, what's going on. There's a circle that I sit in, where I'm very young, young in the sense of being in that circle, even though I'm a recognized elder. Most of the people have been there 30 years, 40 years, and plus. And so I'm in a lot of communities like that, and to request for, as you said, a healing or something to be taught, there's a lot of formality that has to happen,
Mhm.
especially if you want big healing, takes a lot of work. So it makes you think, do I really want this ceremony, right? There's some ceremonies that you have to request 3 to 4 times throughout the year. And part of that is to make sure that the community still wants this. And you always have to gift, you always have to present. And part of the asks of many of the elders is to tend to the land where they want the healing to happen. And that's what people forget, is the land is offering the healing. We are just ambassadors to the land because we work with it more. We're there more. We have our hands in it. So we are ambassadors. The real healing comes from the land. And so there'll be, week-long work parties to come to tend to land to earn it, right? And part of the protocol is to request of the land, can we be there? Do we have permission? Will it hold us in this circle or this ceremony that we're asking? So it's very different. Indigenous ways, you have to ask. You have to ask for help. You have to ask, hey, I need this. I need this teaching. What is the exchange? And we always know that part of that exchange is tending to the nature around us, because that is what sustains us.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely feel that. One of the aspects of community also that we forget or that we don't always perceive immediately is that from a traditional perspective, the idea of community is within a group that has a set of values, a set of laws, a set of protocols, a set of rituals. It's extremely organized within the same mindset in many ways, heart set, soul set, right? There is a culture of community,
Okay.
of that
Mhm.
community is within a certain culture. And as we are in the Western world and coming with Western mind, we bring that culture in. And very
Mm.
often we lack the capacity to understand that it's not just forming a group of people doing one activity together. It's about reflecting on our visions, on our purpose, on our values, because we can only really belong together if there are those discussions, if there is this harmony in some sense. Not that everybody has to be the same, but there are a set of rules that are unbreakable. There's things you can't really do in native communities, and you need to understand that. And very often people see community, at least from the Western mind, or where we come into community, coming around a practice or coming around an activity, right?
Mm.
It's geared towards what we're going to do. Let's say we are going to chop woods for the sweat lodge, or
Mhm.
we are going to tend the garden, but there are not the important layers of values. There are not the important layers of rituals always. So it's difficult then for the glue of community to really happen without that. And
Yeah.
especially if we are, many people don't live on the land or don't have access to land even, if we have lost that connection
Mhm.
for a long time, we might not even understand what is really bringing us together, what it is asking of us. And also, it's temporary. Community used to be you were born into the community and you will die into that community. So it was your life. It was not an activity. It was not
Mhm.
something, that is fun to do or that is enjoyable. It's also something that comes with sacrifice, with difficulty, with struggles. And communities had or still have for some the way to also manage that and to do that. And because we're in a culture of entertainment, of
Yeah.
distraction, or of pleasure, let's say, of constant, high on the next fun
Yeah.
thing to do for a very short amount of time, this hook that we have,
Mm.
uh, we have very hard time to integrate the other aspect of community, to even see how important they are,
Yeah.
which require things that are not pleasant, that are difficult, where maybe in that moment, in that weekend of helping or that day of doing community things, you didn't get anything directly for you. Even in fact, you're probably always getting something from the connection, from the land, and from all of that. But it's kind of this difficulty to get out of the high of
Mm.
the self that wants to have something out of it because that's how we've been trained, right? You sign up for school, you're going to get something. You pay for a product, you're getting the product. You pay for a service. And here it's not transactional in the same way.
Mm.
And also, it's not always transactional with joy and pleasure. Sometimes
Yep.
it's with pain. Sometimes it's with difficult conversation. Sometimes it's, and very often it's with unresolved problems
Mm.
that's just the place we're in the world right now. And we don't have solution, but we're coming together to witness each other in this moment. So it's not
Yeah.
always problem solving oriented like our world is. It's more state of where we are and this capacity to be together in that struggle. And I think that's often missing. People idealize community. I have a few friends that lives in modern communities in Oregon that have recreated a whole village and everything is shared and there's a lot of rules and regulations and laws and the way you participate and when there is children, when there is food, when there is building to repair, etc., etc. And there are a lot of protocols around conflict resolution, around disagreements, around balance
Yeah.
of time, because if you're a new mother, yeah, your place in the community is going to be different than a single man in terms of your
Yeah.
availability because you raising the child is a gift to the community. It's not just her raising her child, it's this child is going to participate, right? So that's a layer that I think is also really important to remember and to explore.
Yeah, I'll add two things for that to that and be brief. One of them is I think you keep saying it, but I'm just going to say it out is being in community is not an avoidance of conflict, right? And a lot of people think that spiritual communities are supposed to be we're not supposed to be human in them. And
Mm,
humans, if a human to human relationship exists, there will be conflict at one point,
mm,
right? And
mhm,
that's why there's a lot of protocols, a lot of the watered down protocol of Ho'oponopono, which really takes years and years to study. And when you were is for conflict resolution. And it takes weeks to do Ho'oponopono correctly, it can take weeks, right? Because you're sitting and everyone gets to talk and it's very different than what has been watered down. And so we forget that, there's this weird thing that, oh, okay, now I'm in a spiritual community. There's going to be no conflict. Yeah, you're with humans. And then I'll add to that. again, in Indigenous circles, we recognize that our community we're not human centric. And I say that a lot to people, but I don't think they get it until they have conversations with me, when they think that I will prioritize a human relationship over that of land or that of an animal. I don't, right? They're equal to me to a certain degree, and I probably skew more towards land and animal than humans because that's how I've looked.
That's where
Because
it's
that's how
needed right now, right? We've done a lot of
because
things
that's what it's
essentially.
needed right now, right? That's what it's needed right now. And so, I think people don't understand that till you're really faced with, people who will be like, okay, that's great. You want to leave? Sounds great. I'm going to go take care of this. And they miss the drama. We always do everything out of free will, completely free will, and people have a problem with free will. They but that's a whole nother conversation that we'll talk into it. But I think this is an opportunity, right, as we continue to build this community online as well as in our circles and on land, to pause and to reflect and to come with an empty cup, and not just expect it to be filled by someone else, but also even that cup that you created has value. So your vessel has value, right? If you come and you work on land, you can fill it up with work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll finish by just saying, yeah, think about it when you want to create community or want to participate in community or want to call community, right? That you're not just bringing your vision, your passion, your love, all the good stuff, right? But that you're also bringing your sweat and your tears and your pain and your struggle and community that are really strong that I know of. It's when all of that is presented in the community, all of that is acknowledged. In fact, you can't integrate a community without sharing all of that, because they want to know, yeah, not just that you want to help that, but what's really going on, because we're also energetically in community, spiritually in community, not just physically, right? So that's the good things to reflect upon.
Mhm. That's the practical wisdom of blood, sweat, tears, and prayer.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Thank you, Marita. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.